I'm just going to head back to the viewport and take a look at these components. We know that the x-axis going that way, like going up is that way and going down is that way. So going left is positive and going right is negative. So we want to make sure that these collision boxes are in the right place. So if I click on this one, it says up box, when really this should be the low box. So it's in the wrong place. I'm just going to switch them around. So up box is going to be where low box is, and low box is going to be where the up box was, like so. So we get up box and low box. Just make sure that you make that change if it's required. So I'm going to compile this. And I believe we're done with the CPU, the computer's logic. So I'm going to head back to the content browser. And we're going to start working on our user interface logic, the pause menu and the other classes. So let's go over the logic of our main menu UI. So let's open that up. And we're going to go into its graph. I'm just going to remove all these for now. The first thing we want to do is set the input mode. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to make a custom event. And I'm going to call this set input mode. We want to get the player controller. And we're going to set input mode to game and UI. I'm going to connect those two. And we're also going to show the mouse cursor. So let's drag off the get player controller node and we're going to show mouse cursor. We want to set show mouse cursor. Let's add a comment to that. So I'm going to highlight it, press C, and call this set input mode. Next, we're going to go over the logic that occurs when the player clicks the play game button. So if we were to, let's see, if we were to select the play game button, if we go down, we're going to look for unreleased. So we're going to click on that, and that will add a unreleased event. We can hold down B, left click to add a branch node. I'm just going to go back to the designer. Just make sure the button is selected. Go back to the graph. And it would be highlighted in the variable list. I'm just going to drag it in. So that's the play game button. And I'm going to type is hovered. So if we release this button and it's hovered, then that means we want to do whatever the button lets us do, which is to open the level game map. So I'm going to drag off this, open level, and we're going to open a level game map. Just straighten this. I'm going to open game map. Just make sure the name of the level is exactly the same as it is in the content browser. It's case sensitive. So yeah. So I'm going to add a comment to this. I'm going to call it play game. Let's go over what happens when the player quits the game. So going to head to Fit Designer, and I'm going to select the Quit button. Now the reason why I come to Fit Designer and select the button is because that when we select it and head back to the graph, it automatically highlights the given variable in the variable list. Obviously, if it has a suitable name, it makes it easy for us to pick it out from the list, but if we want like immediate access, we can literally just go back to the designer, select it, head back to the graph, and it's automatically highlighted for us. Just drag it in like that. So we get the quit button. We're going to check if it's hovered. So I'm just going to grab this and this like that. I'm going to connect this to that. So we're checking if the quit button is hovered. If it is, then what we're going to do, we're going to execute a console command. So execute console command, and the command that we're going to execute is quit. So just type QUIT, quit. Also with our button selected, I'm just going to scroll all the way down and go to unreleased. So the quit button selected, and we can see its details, and I'm going to go click unreleased. And we're going to plug this into the branch node here. So I'm just going to highlight all of this, press C, and I'll just call this quit. Now lastly, and this is purely for aesthetic purposes, is this nice reflective shine canvas. It's basically going to like reflect across randomly. It's going to go across the top. It's also a good opportunity to demonstrate how to move widget elements in real time. So let's head back to the graph, and we'll just go over the logic for that. I'm just going to grab one of these custom events and duplicate it. And let's call this let's call it Shine Sparkle. Okay. So the first thing we've got to do is get the Shine canvas, which is this one. The only thing the Shine canvas has on it is 2 images. So for it to hide it, it will just hide those 2 images. So we're going to get the Shine canvas, I'm going to drag it in, and we are going to get the slot as a canvas slot. So slot as canvas slot, like that. Then we're going to get its position. So get position. I'm going to split the struct pin because we want the separate values for the X and Y. Now what this is going to do, we're going to add a float to the X. We're going to add about 32 units to it. And we're going to make a variable called xpos. So let's create a variable over here. Let's call it xpos. And it's going to be a float. Let's compile that. I'm just going to drag xpos in, and we're going to set it. Let's connect this to that. Connect this to that. That. So we're going to set xpos the current x plus 32. And from the canvas slot pin, we're actually going to set position. So set position, like so. And the position on the x-axis is going to be xpos. So on this in position input parameter, this 2-dimensional vector thing, we're going to right-click it and split struct pin. We'll get an x and a y, and we're going to get the xpos. You can either drag it in or just connect this straight to that. But personally, I just like grabbing this variable and getting it. We'll just put this in xpos like that, and the y will remain unchanged. So put that into y. And after we do that, we want to check that the X position, because when we add 32 to it, eventually it's going to exceed the width of the screen. So we need to bring it back and reset it. So what we're going to do, we're going to get the X position of the shine canvas. And we're going to say if it's greater than a certain amount, so greater than float, we'll say if it's greater than 3000, that's a good number. If it's greater than 3000, it's got a branch node, so hold B, left click. If it's greater than that amount, then what we're going to do, we're going to have a nice little delay. So delay. The duration for it is going to be a random float in range. So random float in range. Now this is going to vary from 5 to 12 seconds. You can experiment with it and play with values that you like. 5 to 12 seconds is okay. It's not too frequent and it's not too long. So after that delay, then we're going to again set the position of the slot canvas. So I'm going to duplicate that. The canvas slot is going to go here. That. The x-axis is going to be 0, but it's back at the start. But the y-axis needs to be the same as what it was. So the y-axis is basically where it begins, or where it's currently at. And we just connect those up like that. So yeah, let's drag a nice box over all of this, and we'll add a comment. We can call this reflective shine sparkle, because I can't think of a better name. Maybe you can. Okay, so that's the logic for the main menu UI. So let's go over the events so that the certain events are called when they need to be. So at the top, I'm going to right click and I'm going to add a event construct. So event construct. And I'm also going to add a event tick. So right click, event tick. From the event construct, we're going to call the set input mode. So drag off this, set input mode. See it right there. And from the event tick, we're going to set the shine sparkle. So shine sparkle. I'm going to highlight all of that. Let's call it events. I'm going to set its color to red and set the color bubble to red as well. That's basically it. That's the logic for our main menu UI. So let's head back to the content browser, and we're going to open up the Pregame Menu UI widget, and we're going to set up the logic for this. We're going to start with the left side and right side logic. So let's go to the graph. I'm just going to clear these away for now. So what we want to do is create a highlight function so that when the player selects one of these buttons, it will be highlighted so that they know that they've selected that given option. So let's go into the graph, and what we're going to do is grab in the we're going to start with the left side button, which is this one. So let's get the left side button from the variable list. And what we're going to do, we're going to just grab this and get style, like so. I'm going to right click on this pin here and split struct pin. And from the widget style normal, I'm going to break this. So I'm going to break slate brush, and we should get another set of output parameters here. Now I want to make a slate brush. You want to make, so right click and make a button style, which is this. And we're going to use this to set the style. So grab off this and set style. And this will go into there like so. This slate brush will go into normal. Where we break the slate brush, these settings will go directly into the corresponding input on the make slate brush. The only thing that we want to alter is the tint. So what we can do, we can grab off tint and we're going to make a slate color. Now the button can be highlighted to any color you want, but we're just going to use the default color from the current style. Or it could be any color we want. We can basically have it as a parameter for the function. So everything else will be connected. So the widget style hovered will go to hovered. Widget style pressed will go to pressed. Widget style disabled will go to disabled. Normal padding, the press padding, the press sound, and the hovered sound. We're basically just passing in the whatever the current parameters are, because we're not going to be changing any of that. We're only changing the color. So that's all good. Now with these, we're going to pass in whatever image it has, whatever draw as it has, whatever tiling it has, whatever mirroring it has. It's only the tint that we want to alter or have access to. And that should be it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab off this specified color, because we want to be able to set that as a input parameter. So grab off this, and we're going to type reroute. We're going to add a reroute node and move this over here. And I'm going to select all of this except the reroute node and except the left side button, because this isn't the only button we want to do this with. We want to do it with quite a few buttons. Let's drag a box over all of this. And I'm going to right click. You can right click on any of the nodes, it doesn't matter which one. Just right click on a node, any node, as long as you've selected all of these. So right click. And we're going to collapse to function. So it's made two inputs. Let's tweak it. So let's go into that function. As you can see, the function also appeared in the functions list. I'm just going to click it, press F2. I'm going to rename this to set button highlighted. Okay. So if we go into this function here, it does all this for us. But we only want a single input. So I'm going to check the details panel for this function. I'm going to get rid of one of these buttons. So let's get rid of button 3. And we're going to make sure that self 2 also goes to the target, because that's what we want to set the style on, that given button. And I'm going to change this name style self 2 to button ref, so buttonref. And we have our specified color input parameter as well, which goes here. So that looks okay. Just going to head back to the graph. Just going to disconnect that. And we can basically delete our reroute node. So we have a nice function that will set our button highlighted for us. So let's complete the logic that will let us do that. So we have our left side button. So if we click that, so on clicked, let's move it up here. So if we click that, we're basically going to set its color to be something. We could manually just click on the the color picker, or we can grab off this and we can make a linear color. Personally, I like to make a linear color, so I like punching in nice values. That's red, green, blue, and the alpha. So I'm going to set the RGB to 0.5 and the alpha to 1. So let's connect that up. So if you click on left side, it will highlight left side. But we also want it to remove the highlights from the right side. So I'm going to duplicate this and the linear color, duplicate that. I'm going to connect this up. You need to get the right side button, which is this one. I'm going to drag it in, get it, space it out a bit. Just going to connect this to button ref. And it will remove the highlight from the right button if we click the left side button. So the alpha, it doesn't matter what color it is. If the alpha is 0, we won't see it. Then, because we picked left side, what we're going to do, we're going to create a get player function. So let's get the player. So we get player controller. We get the controlled pawn. Get controlled pawn. And from that we cast to player underscore BP. So we're just going to connect this up like that. I'm actually going to highlight this, right click on it and collapse it to function. We want to make sure that we have a as player BP output. So I'm going to drag off that, add a reroute node. Let's move it away a bit, highlight these, right click, collapse to function, and we'll call this get player. Just going to get rid of that. And if the player chooses the left side, then side index will be 0. So we're going to grab off this, I'm going to set side index. So side index will be 0. And we're going to make a few variables here. Let's add another variable. It's a boolean. It's going to be side chosen. Let's add another variable. It's going to be color chosen. And another one called difficulty chosen. Okay. So if the player clicks on left or right, then the side will be chosen. So we're going to set side chosen to true. It's just a way of keeping track of whether the player has interacted with the menu or not. Because we have a ready button, which is currently let's go to the button itself. The button is currently enabled, but what we're going to do, we're going to disable it. Okay, make sure it's not enabled, so it will be grayed out. We have to kind of force the player to make a choice for all of these options before we're allowed to play the game. So if we go back to the graph, so choosing the left side, we'll highlight the left button. It will remove the highlighting from the right button. It will set the player side index to 0, and it will set the side chosen to true. Now, the right button, if we were to duplicate that, the right button will essentially do the opposite. So what we can do, we can select all of this, duplicate it, and just put in the opposite. So with the right button, if we click on the right button, so add that. If we click the right button, it's going to set the left side highlighting to be off and the right side highlighting to be on. Then it too will get the player function and set the side index to be 1 because it's the right side. And it will set the side chosen to be true. So that's it. That's the logic for choosing a side. So I'm going to highlight all of this. I'm going to press C, add a comment, and I'm going to call it choose side. Let's go over the logic for choosing a color. So we have red button, and we should have blue button, which is here. So if the player clicks the red button, just drag off that. We've got our red button. If the player picks the red button, then what happens is that it's very similar to what happens here. So with the red button selected or highlighted, the variable selected, we're going to add a onClicked. So if we click the red button, we're going to set it to be highlighted. I've just duplicated my set button highlighted function from there, and we're going to just set it up down here. Now the color this is going to be is 1 on the red, 0 on the green, and 0 on the blue, and the alpha is going to be 1. So it will set the red button to be highlighted red, and let's get the blue button. Just going to duplicate this and the linear color. It will set the blue button to have an alpha value of 0, because it doesn't matter what color it is. If the alpha is 0, you can't see it being highlighted. Okay. Then after that, we're going to get the player, just like how we did here. So duplicate that. So get player, and we're going to set the color index. So set color index to 0. Just connect that up. And after we do that, what's going to happen is that we're going to set the color chosen to true. So we've chosen a color. So set color chosen to true. Next is the blue button. So if we duplicate this and add a onClicked event, essentially the same thing that happens here is going to happen for when the blue button is clicked. I'm just going to delete this because we already have our blue button there. So when we click the blue button, what happens is that the red button alpha is 0, but the blue button alpha is 1, and we have to make sure that the color is blue. So red, green, and blue. So blue is 1. You're going to get the player and its color index and the player chosen. I mean the color chosen. Actually, we can leave that alone. Just duplicate this. So we get the player. The color index is going to be 1, and we're going to set the color chosen to true. Either one of these will set the color chosen to true, just as either one of these will set the side chosen to true. And that's the logic behind that. So let's highlight all of this, and I'm going to press C to add a comment, and I'm going to call this choose color. I'm going to compile that.